Hello, beautiful world, and welcome back to Raven Thissel Live. We are kicking off season 3. Can you believe it? And tonight, just like every night, I try to bring you some of the most insightful, impactful, and helpful guests that I can possibly find. Raven Thissel Live exists to infuse people's lives with holistic living insights from experts and people who inspire me from all over the world. We share thought provoking conversations that inspire viewers to live more victoriously by cultivating their entire being, mind, body, spirit. And today we will be joined by someone who is born and raised in New Orleans. He is a father, husband, and a professional chef, a graduate of the Culinary Institute of Louisiana. He is also a 5K jogger and a pastry chef. He says he doesn't mind a culinary, physical, or mental life challenge, and he's learning to be a better Black man every moment of the day by uninstalling and reprogramming outdated, unproductive behaviors and patterns. And he's happy about where he is, and he's even more excited about where he's going. The reason why I have invited Keelan Burke to join me tonight is because I had noticed recently on Facebook that he was sharing information about being a narcissist. That's right. He identifies himself as a person with narcissistic personality disorder. And as somebody who has personally suffered at the hands of a narcissist, like many of you, I wanted to engage him in a conversation that would help all of us understand how to engage with somebody who suffers from narcissistic personality disorder and more. So, the questions that I'm going to ask Keelan Burke tonight are going to be questions that other people have asked me at different points, questions that were sent in to me when I announced that I would be having this interview, and also things based on my own experiences and research on narcissistic personality disorder. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome professional, amazing chef, a friend, and a self proclaimed narcissist, Keelan Burke.
Hello, hello. How art thou?
Hello, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good, and I'm also glad that, like you say, self-proclaimed because I have not been, clinically diagnosed. While at the same time, while researching and looking up information, I was like, I definitely relate to a lot of these behaviors and traits, that is related to narcissism. So, I'm definitely not a clinically diagnosed person with narcissistic personality disorder, but I definitely relate to a lot of narcissistic behaviors.
So, first of all, thank you for being so transparent about that. It's not something that I've seen very often, and I don't think it's something that happens very often in the community, um, in the mental health community, because people tend to want to be the hero in the story. And when we hear the term narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder, a lot of times we immediately in our minds put the horns on somebody,
Yep.
and or we can even do that to ourselves. So it's very rare that someone is so open about suffering or struggling with this particular type of disorder. So thank you for opening yourself up to have
Not,
conversations like this.
not a problem at all. Not a problem at all.
So I guess that leads me to my first question, which is how did you become aware that you were dealing with this?
Um, so pretty much with my personal intimate relationship, where I realized that I really wasn't being intimate in that relationship, and also one of the I guess you could say the straw that broke the camel's back was that I had I pretty much had a situation where during COVID, um, you know, everybody was doing a lot of the social distancing. Everyone was definitely afraid of what COVID could do, and there were fatalities with COVID. And my partner, well, I could say my wife now because I'm newly married, but my wife, she was just on the tail end of having COVID, and I wanted to, go back home to New Orleans, to see my family. While at the same time, it just definitely was not a good idea. But even though I was told no by so many different people of my family, my partner at the time, my wife now, that it's not a good idea. I really wasn't hearing what anybody else had to say. I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and it was also, when, I guess you could say, when it hit the fan, I I realized I started really getting inside myself and started realizing what I did and how I hurt so many people when I did it, and how while I was doing it I didn't care. I was really more just concerned about what it was that I wanted to do. I had this whole plan of going home and giving out gifts to all my family and stuff, which is just the kind of that, uh not necessarily the hero complex, but just being that person that comes and can be celebrated as the one who goes home and brings happiness to everybody. So you can link it, I guess, to the kind of a hero complex. But I was just more concerned about uh getting that praise and just getting what I wanted and being at home, and rather than really thinking of the the situation of hurting other people. And then at the same time too, my grandfather, who was sick at the time, though he did recover from COVID, it still was not a good idea to be traveling, especially with the fact that I'm like traveling in a car with someone who just had COVID, but probably still was could have tested positive at the time. And that was the moment where I was just like, okay, I've been doing a lot of I've been real messed up for a while, and I think this one was the one where I reached out for help. I think that
Mm.
was the time where I believe you noticed as well. I just was open. I was on the social media. Of course, I had my family. Most of my family's on my social media, and uh, I was like, a lot of the conversation I was having with my wife, where she was just kind of the word narcissist kind of popped out a few times.
Mm.
And at first when I would hear that word, it was just kind of like a slap to the face, even though I never really knew what it meant. I just kind of just aligned it with just being selfish, and I just aligned it with just negativity, period. So I didn't want to hear it and I didn't want to listen. But uh after that, you definitely reached out, and I think one of the best things that helped me was you know being suggested to uh look for therapy and to look for a therapist. And that was where a lot of the awareness came to the behaviors that I had, and I was able to start working on being more self-aware, and processing my emotions before just lashing out and doing stuff based on just what I want to do in the moment.
Mm. Wow. So you came aware of this when kind of this big situation happened
Mhm,
and people in your family got hurt by your actions.
mhm.
And what made you then decide to be so public about it? What made you decide to say, I'm just going to talk about this openly?
Because there's a space. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and the thought of pushing people away and getting to a space to where I'm gonna ultimately end up alone, um
Mm.
is it's that's the I think one of the worst things in an ultimate situation is I think there are times where we want to be alone and we need peace, and to be alone to have peace sometimes, but like just to be alone, period. That's not what I'm striving for. That's not what I want. I want my family. I want I want my nuclear family, and I also want my distant family. And I don't want to push them away. And at one point in time, it was just more about what was happening in my intimate relationship, and I would just kind of push it off on her, like, oh, she's just annoyed, or she's just being a woman, or she's just she's in her feelings. It ain't really nothing that serious. But it was when it began to leach out, outside of that into other relationships, like I said, with my family, was when I started to really realize, like, okay, all this stuff she's been saying for quite some time, there's definitely some weight to it. And if I don't do something about this, or if I don't, maybe, and I'm glad I did, because like I said, you were, I had a few people, you were the one that directed me to getting professional help. And but yeah, it was just that big fear of being alone was the real, like, nah, I can't go down like this. I have to, I can't just, and the other thing is I can't just be settled with saying that, oh, okay, this is just the way I am, and that was one of my fears, was that when I did get help, that if I was diagnosed, I didn't want to just settle into the idea that, oh, this is just who I've succumbed to be, and this is, there's nothing else I can really do about it. So yeah.
So a lot of self-awareness, and I didn't know that I was the person who, kind of encouraged you to get therapy, and that was effective.
Yes,
So I'm
yes.
glad to know that. So you've been in therapy now for how long?
It's been so technically almost a year, because that was at the beginning of this year. That was about it was during the holidays and Christmas. So, the beginning of the year. So I'll say give or take 10 months now.
Mm. So I follow this man, and I think I shared a video from him with you once. But he is a diagnosed narcissist. He has narcissistic personality disorder,
Mhm.
and he goes on TikTok and he talks about his thought processes, his motivation for doing things, and he explains things from a narcissist perspective. And I heard him talk about how therapy for a narcissist can be a good thing. It can help you to, understand your own thought processes so that you can choose different behaviors.
Mhm.
Or for some narcissists, it can actually be a bad thing. It can actually make them even better at being manipulative, and better at lying, and better at,
Right.
you know, using certain terminology to appease certain people, and it just can make things worse. So, my question for you is, with you being in therapy now, and with you kind of identifying that you have some of the internal struggles that a narcissist may have,
Mhm.
how do you make therapy a positive thing for the people in your life instead of just serving yourself better with it?
Um, it's real patience. A lot of the times where I'm met with a circumstance, I have to really pause in the moment. And sometimes to others, it may seem like I'm stuck, but like I'm really having to process, like, okay, do we want to go down this road, or do we want to go down this one? And um, and a lot of times it's just now it's sacrificing that ego. It's sacrificing
Mm,
this inflated sense of importance. I it's really just the process, and the beginning of that process, as you said earlier, and I said earlier as well, is self-awareness. If you're not aware of your feelings. I saw something the other day that spoke about, a guy was just saying how he was asking, like, his students how do they feel about stuff, and a lot of the times their answer was what they were going to do about it, not necessarily their feelings. And you know I can't speak for everybody, but I know for a long time I wasn't really good at speaking about how I felt about something. I wasn't able to say this is not only just I'm frustrated, but why I'm specifically frustrated. Or, man, this makes me I'm actually sad, or I'm disappointed, or um I'm tickled, or whatever. But once I've gotten to a space of, okay, she told me this, or even, like I say, oh, she called me a narcissist, rather than just saying, okay, I'm gonna lash out because my normal reflexes that I feel attacked, right? So I feel like, oh, she said that to hurt me, or they said this to make me feel bad. So my reflex is I got to deliver something back to make them feel bad. So now it's okay. I'm not trying to be in a fight with anybody. So when I hear something that makes me feel bad, now I start to think about, okay, why did that hurt me so much, or why am I having these this depressive weight that just like fell upon me, like what is going on? And sometimes I may have to say, sometimes I have to just be quiet and listen and humbly just kind of take on what's coming. And that is like, still to this day, it's still not easy. um I had a moment yesterday where just kind of having an accountability discussion, and like I was kind of out of it for a few hours, because it was like, man, I got to absorb and process all of this information on what it was that I've been doing, and what is it that I need to do, and getting myself in a space of saying, okay, I have to practice this new behavior. And with anything in this world, you want to get good at anything, it takes repetition and it takes practice. And if you one of the things, the reason why I know, and what my therapist also told me why I wasn't diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, is because I actually came for help. She was saying, my therapist is a woman, and she was saying that she's dealt with them, and she was like, narcissists don't typically request help and actually want help. A lot of times, if they're doing it, it's kind of they were forced into it, or they're kind of doing it now to quiet somebody else up and be like, oh, see, I did it. But she was like, the fact that you came, and you're really concerned, and um, and for a while I was kind of taking it like, I don't know if she knows what she's talking about or not, because I was like, I have all these feelings, and I'm going down a rabbit hole and searching all of this information about narcissism, and I'm like, but I mentally aligned with all of this stuff that's going on, but she was like, yeah, but she was like, those are more learned behaviors. And uh, one of the things I believe that kind of pushed me down, or that led me down that path, was, I was adopted and raised the only child. So I was a very spoiled, very spoiled kid, right? So
Hmm.
there was a lot of, uh, again, that was a lot of and I was like the youngest of the cousins. So I'm like the baby of the cousins, and I'm also the youngest, and I'm the only child, so I don't have to share anything with anybody or whatever. um and I took that with me well into adulthood, like that sense of being important, that sense of I don't have to do anything for anybody, but I want everybody to do it for me, and just again, I used to align it with selfishness, but it was definitely way more than that. And I had to really go back to so many different moments as a child, up to now. And I still, every day, I have times where something may happen and it'll remind me of a random moment, as an adolescent or a kid, and I'm like, dang, yeah, I remember that. Dang, that's kind of like what just happened yesterday. Like, okay, I see why I have these behaviors. And then now it's just the moment of making a decision on, do I want to continue to be this way or not? And you just it's just a matter of making that decision. Like I say, with anything, if you want to be good at it, you have to you have to get a lot of reps. You have to be repetitious in it. So um that's just pretty much for me where I am now, is that I still struggle, but I still have to continue to put in that work, and it never stops at the end of the day.
Hmm. So I wanted to talk to you not just for I thought about having a one-on-one conversation with you because I have questions about, dealing with a narcissist for the long term.
Mhm.
I am co-parenting with a narcissist, and I will be until forever.
Mhm.
And so because of the situation I find myself in, I am always, on alert and wondering and, curious about how to support my children through having a narcissistic parent. And how do I equip them with the emotional tools and skills? Because this is someone who, unlike yourself, is not trying to correct the behaviors. Um, More importantly than that, my own reasons for wanting the conversation. I remember what it felt like to go through what your wife may have gone through before you realized that this is what you're dealing with and started to try to correct your behaviors. And I felt deeply confused, hurt, and scared, and like I was losing my mind because I was being gaslit all the time.
Mhm.
Um, and if I had seen an interview like this one, or if I had, any idea that there was such a thing as narcissism or that other people were going through the same things, then maybe I would have had the strength to make different decisions sooner. Or maybe I would have been able to help my then partner get help,
Mhm.
or who knows. So I
Mhm.
wanted to have this conversation with you on this platform because I wanted to open up a gateway to help people understand that they're not alone. If they're struggling with narcissistic personality disorder or they think they might potentially be exhibiting some signs of it, then I wanted them to have the experience of seeing and hearing from you.
Mhm.
And I also, for those who are on the other side, who are at the hands of the person who's suffering in this way, then they might be empowered in their situation and in their moment.
Mhm.
So the questions that I will ask you will be more um, to highlight potential solutions or things to look for or to warn. There was something that you said when you were answering my first question. You talked about how your response to your now wife at the time was to really disregard her emotions
Mhm.
and to chalk it up to her being a woman or over being over taking a situation that's not a big deal and and blowing it out of proportion. And that is very normal for this type of dynamic.
Mhm.
So I would say to listeners, audiences, whomever, that narcissism a lot of times is really built into the misogynistic systems that we have at play that
Definitely.
say women are not to be really taken seriously. Women have a tendency to exaggerate, or just this using your womanhood as a means of belittling your experience of them.
Mhm.
Um, and so I would say to women, don't do it to yourself. Don't begin to hear that so much that you gaslight yourself out of what you actually feel. Don't say, well, it's just my period, it's just my hormones, or maybe I'm just tripping, or don't belittle your own emotions. Continue to pursue the experience that you're having. And a healthy partner, which is what Keelan is learning how to be, a healthy partner will validate your experience. A healthy partner will listen to you, and
Yep.
they will begin to understand that your romantic partner is the person who has a front row seat to your truth.
Mhm.
So you have to choose somebody who you can trust to some degree. Like you got to choose somebody who, when they say you're cutting up or you hurt me, that you can take that seriously.
Right.
Um, and I'm sorry, did you have a response or thoughts on
No,
that?
no, no, you're right. I think also just in regards when you're just talking about don't do it to yourself. One of the things I can say realistically too is the one of the most important things as far as protecting yourself from a narcissist is setting those boundaries and like not budging on them. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying no, I'm not going to do that, or you know, they're trying to force you to be somewhere or to force you to that you got to do something a certain way. No, I'm not doing that, and I'm not going to do that unless, or I'm just not going to do it. Period. The power of no will drive a narcissist crazy. And I remember I used to that used to throw me into a rage, like to a fit. Um, and I was left multiple times. This wasn't like just one thing where it blew up. It was like I've been left a lot of times, but it wasn't until again, it wasn't until the funny part is if it wasn't for COVID, because we were co-parenting as well, but with COVID and how crazy everything was kind of getting at that time with virtual learning and stuff, we needed someone to be at home, with our daughter. And that was, I think that was for me, is like, this is my last chance to get this right. And it was definitely a huge struggle at the beginning, um, but she had boundaries and she stuck, and she didn't budge on them. No matter how I tried to gaslight or how much I tried to make excuses or tried to just not take accountability for what I did, she didn't budge. And that's uh, a huge tool for anyone who's dealing with a narcissist or plans on dealing with a narcissist long term.
Such good advice. And even if you're just like let's say you're dating or you're making friends or you're new at a work environment, a great way to gauge the mental health, the mental capability of a relationship, whether it's business, pleasure, or what have you, is to have boundaries.
Yeah,
If you observe how people react to your boundaries, you are observing whether or not you can have a healthy coexistence with them.
correct.
So I appreciate you for calling attention to that. Um, I think it's also really important to talk about being a parent who is struggling in these ways, because and tell me if this is true for you, because I know everybody is different, and that includes people who are struggling with narcissism. Everybody with narcissism is different.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like feelings of guilt, shame, or regret are sort of at in the fear of those emotions, or facing those emotions, motivates this power struggle and this desire for power, control, and attention.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so from that place, it seems like parenting a healthy child and pouring into your child in ways that build them up, to be strong and emotionally and mentally sound people, would be a struggle.
Yes. And with that, it's that's when you start talking about being vulnerable, right? When you get into a space of being able to say, I'm, I'm afraid that you see that I have this issue, so I'm afraid that you're gonna wield it against me. So, well, like I said earlier, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna attack you first. Or if at
Mm.
any point in time I feel like you're making me feel bad, I'm gonna attack you. And what's horrible about that, and I can say that I definitely have done it at some point, is now you start to use and utilize your children against somebody else that your co-parent, that you're uh in whatever type of relationship you have with them, while at the same time you start to kind of see how you start seeping that type of energy onto your kids. And
Mm.
that's a scary thing too, because they're not going to be kids forever. Eventually either they're going to see you for who you are, or they're going to be those types of people too, which is even worse.
Mm.
So um yeah, it's a thing. I think that just like I say, I think it falls in alignment of uh being vulnerable. And one of the things a narcissist is not willing to do is to be vulnerable at all. Like, anytime you say something about me, I got the shield up and I got the sword ready and we getting ready to go to battle. Like, you're never gonna see my soft insides. You're never gonna you're never gonna catch me with my arms wide, saying it ready for an embrace. Um, because I just think that the attack is coming, and you don't know if this attack's going to be the one that really knocks you down real bad. So you just got to always, trying to always be ready. And I mean, it's exhausting too, which is real sad because we want to always seem like we're okay, or we always want to seem like we're on top of stuff, and we're the big person. But it's really exhausting, and that's another reason why it's just so vicious over time, because you just never took the time to be vulnerable. And then by the time you decide to be vulnerable, you're being vulnerable with somebody that you've been beaten down for an extended period of time. So you're being vulnerable now, and then like, and now you're even upset. Like, this is why I don't say it. This is why I can't tell you nothing. And then just, and now this person feels justified in being that person. So you gotta. That's one of the things I think that is another challenge. And I think for someone on the other side, again, it's definitely okay to have boundaries, but I think it's also a task to figure out how to accept a narcissist when they're being vulnerable, and it's almost kind of one of those things where it's like you want to handle it with kid gloves, as they say. Like, you don't want to just kind of dive in there and just be like, they're saying, hey, this is how I feel. And it's kind of like, yeah, I know that's how you feel because you do this, this, and this all the time. Now they're going to kind of go back in their shell and they're going to get ready to start attacking again. Sometimes it's, one of the things I know I've been doing, sometimes I just want to be heard, to be acknowledged with what it is that I said. And, maybe later let's discuss what we can do or how we can do it. But I want to be able to just kind of release a lot of that pressure that I've been holding on to because I haven't really spoken to anybody. And that was the great thing about, like I said, about therapy, was now I have somebody to speak to candidly about what's really going on, and I'm not trying to shape this story to benefit me or to make it look like someone's doing something to me. I could speak on how I feel about what they did and how that made me feel, but it doesn't necessarily mean they was doing it to me. So being vulnerable is I think is more of the response to that to your statement and your question.
Yeah. So as you are like dealing with narcissistic personality disorder, the first thing I think of when I'm trying to identify who I'm working with here is I'm looking for empathy. I'm looking for signs that this person has empathy for others. And at first, the first example that you gave, you talked about how you wanted to go home so you could give gifts to people, but it wasn't this benevolent thing. It was really a self-serving act. So it can be confusing for people, because many of us have the idea that a narcissist doesn't ever do anything for other people. They're selfish, but that's not true. A lot of narcissists actually do community work and things like that, but it's about the motivation behind it, and is it from a place of genuine empathy. So I'm curious, as you are learning new behaviors or you're learning about your own thought patterns, do you have empathy for your wife? Like, do you
Definitely now.
feel
Definitely now. And it's one of those things where it hurts. Like, it's one of those things where it's like I never was it wasn't a word that I threw around a lot. And as we began to talk about it, because we started doing counseling as well together, and taking the time to really put myself in that position and say, okay, how would this really affect me? Because that I wasn't doing that at all. Like, it was just, again, it was me. Like, I could do something and she would tell me how it makes her feel, and I'd be like, oh, whatever. And she could do the exact same thing, and I'd be like, how could you do this? Like, what is wrong? Who would do something like this? It's like, that's me. Like, what are you talking about? So, like that, and uh taking all of that all at one time at one point was like, it was very I was depressed because
Mm.
then I started kind of looking like, dang man, I've been trash for a hot minute, and like I'm starting to worry about, like, is this me? Is there anything I can really do about this? Or um again, and what's the saying, how do you eat a whole elephant? You take one bite at a time. It's like, I had to
Mhm.
just start taking a moment after each moment after each moment to just, when there was a lot of times, like, speaking of empathy, there was a lot of times where she would begin to express herself, and, expressing herself may take 30 minutes to an hour. And a lot of the times I would just be frustrated, like, man, I could be doing something else. And she's, uh, she's going through her expressing her feelings pretty much. And rather than empathizing for a long time, I would just feel like, man, I could be watching a movie, I could be working on something, I could be working on something, I could be, whatever. And now it's a space of realizing, like, man, she's only saying all of this stuff because she, especially at one time where she wasn't being heard, now she's being heard. Now she could go on forever because it's like, I got to get all of this out now. And and now, though it does hurt and it does make me feel some kind of way, I still realize, like, well, if I for oh so many years wasn't able to express and be heard, I would, and I'm now being heard, I would have to get all of this stuff out too. So now I put myself in the space of, okay, I need to listen. And there's still some times where, there's some times where I might hear a certain word or a certain phrase amongst everything that she's saying, and I might shut down because now I'm harping on the fact that she said that I did this or I used to do this or whatever. And everything else is just kind of going through one ear and out the other. And I'm still focused on it. Sometimes I have to say, wait, hold on, let's stop. Like, I'm really not listening at this point because I'm still stuck over here. And not to be rude, because at one point in time that was kind of a gaslighting tool or technique, right? Is you're expressing yourself, you say this one thing, and it's like, nah, we're gonna stay on this one thing because you're wrong about this one thing. Forget everything else you're saying. I'm gonna make you bow to your knees about this one thing you said that I really truly believe is wrong. And now, if I say, if now I'm at a space where I say, okay, I disagree about that, but I hear everything else you're saying. We can get back to that, whenever we do.
Mm.
But yeah, that's all of it is it's tough. It's like I say, the self-awareness. And one of the things I, I believe is that's the very beginning. If you're not self-aware, you can't practice empathy if you're not self-aware. If you don't know how you would feel about stuff, how can you put yourself in somebody else's, place if you're not knowing how you react or how you take on information or take on trauma or whatever it is that whatever experience you may have. So um practicing that self awareness has definitely led to a space of empathizing, whether she's going through something within our relationship or she's going through something outside of the relationship. And, at the same time, even outside of relationship, it's helped with me at my job with working with employees, right? So, an employee may be going through something which is kind of affecting their their productivity, and I have to be able to, sometimes I have to find a way to empathize with whatever they may be going through outside of work, and to kind of be that leader that can talk about it in a professional manner, and just being able to say, okay, like, not just come at them like, well, I still need you to do the work. It's like, okay, look, I totally see this is what if I was going through this, man, I'd probably be messed up too. um do you feel like you may need some time? And at the same time saying and honestly saying this, if you need something, if we need to talk, let me know. We go to the side, we go to the office, we can talk. Um, but like I say, even in the intimate relationship, I have to be able to be open and and willing to hear and listen to what she's saying and how she felt, even if it happened 10 years ago. You know, uh, a lot of our trauma has happened since we were kids. A lot of our trauma has happened from when we were young adults. So I can't be that person that's saying, oh, I don't want to hear it just because it makes me feel bad. I have to put myself in her shoes and know that, hey, she has to get this off as well. So yeah, it's definitely a tool. Empathy is a tool that I'm consistently having to practice, because without it, you're gonna always just technically just be doing stuff for yourself. So
Hmm. I'm glad and I don't even think I congratulated you. Congratulations on your marriage.
thank you.
And I know your wife. She
Yes,
went to school with us too, and she is
yes,
really amazing. She's very
yes,
funny. I
very,
remember her being hilarious
yes.
and magnetic. And congratulations. I'm
Thank
happy
you,
for
thank
you.
you. We appreciate it.
Um, but I'm glad that you brought up that outside of the home
Mhm.
dynamic, when you're at work, from my observations and experience, it seems like one of the narcissist's greatest tools is being one way in public and a whole different way behind closed doors at home.
Yes,
And it's like they're just the mayor, and nobody can ever imagine them possibly doing or saying anything so damaging. And then as soon as the door is closed, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You get a whole different version of that person that nobody else sees. It's
yes.
your own personal hell.
Mhm,
I lived it.
mhm.
So when it comes to showing empathy to people at work, versus showing empathy to your person at home, have you found it to be easier to give grace to people who don't live with you?
Oh yeah, definitely. That was the man. That was the biggest. That was one of the biggest issues. Period. Because I'm supposed to be in an intimate relationship, but everybody else is getting grace but her. And we still to this day still talk about that, and it's one of those things where I'm like, I still haven't completely figured out that why. There's some things that I've connected that I feel like is it's maybe the reason, but it's kind of a mix of what I saw as womanhood growing up, from various members of my family, and just kind of taking what I thought what was going on and making that what womanhood was. So I would, and now saying that, oh, this is something I'm just not going to deal with, period. And just feeling justified from it, just from my own little rules that I made up in my mind. And that's very dangerous. And um but yeah, that was that, even in college, right? It was like, you'll do this and this and this. And especially like you was talking about, in a misogynistic society. I would do all kinds of sacrifices for all of my male friends, and uh before anything. Like, and that was the truth. And like, when uh and here's one of those moments where it was like I felt like I was being attacked. It's like, yeah, man, that seems pretty homoerotic. And I was like, whoa, what you calling me? Like, what you trying to say? You trying to say I'm gay or something? Like, I'm getting all offended. It's just like, nah, it just seems like you're more close to all of your male friends than you are to me. I'm like, nah, man, you tripping. Like, just again, just blowing it off. And now being in a space of just self-awareness, I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I that is definitely how it was. But Now one of my biggest main focuses is that, if with my daughter and my wife is like they're going to get the best of me. Everybody else gets the what's left, rather than the world's getting the best of me and then I come home and I'm just giving the scraps to my family, and then I definitely that was a super norm at one point in time. Um, and like I said, we still have these discussions like regularly. And then the more we do it, the easier it gets, but sometimes what usually gets me is when I'm questioned like a specific question, like what makes you think, or what you think was happening when you was going through this and you was responding this way. And like I said, I'll be stuck for a minute because now I'm processing it and I'm having to think about, I start grabbing all of these things of that moment, like what type of music was out at that time, and what was the fads of that time, and what was I doing, and who was I in contact with, and who was what relationships I had going on at the time, and started really just having to break down like what why I was that person. And but yeah, I without a shadow of a doubt, everybody, and I mean, it's it's something that still I'm pulling away from now.
Yeah.
You know, like
It's a
before,
lot to unlearn.
yeah, exactly. And there was a space, like right before the holiday situation I was telling you about. I had, uh, we had family over, and it was definitely a good time. And for me, like just having my family over, my outside family over and stuff. We had just got a house, and uh, like having them at my house and being able to host them or whatever, though I was still working and stuff. And sometimes there were things that would come up, and I would be super quick to give those who came from the outside, those are my family. I was giving them grace before, and more specifically, as I was talking about, even in the male sense, right? I'm giving my brother so much grace. And mind you, if you remember, I said I was adopted and grew up the only child. Now, though I do now have a brother now, this isn't someone. I've definitely known my wife longer than I knew my brother, but I was still struggling with
Mm.
this idea of dealing with the confrontation of speaking to my family and saying, okay, hey, we got this situation and we need to deal with it and just deal with it head on. That was one of the issues I had when I first got into management and food service, was just not dealing with the being dealing with the confrontation, just not addressing it. You got systems where you're working for a corporation or whatever, you have systems where you can make documentation, and then whether you're going to wind up terminating them or not. But the thing about that is, in your home life, you don't have that system behind you. So there was a point where I got real used to that system, to knowing that I got this machine behind me that's gonna help me deal with confrontation. But when it comes to confrontation in your personal life, you know, the machine is you now. Like you have to stand tall in who you are and what you're gonna believe in, what's your integrity gonna be. And that was definitely a struggle as well. But I definitely I've been working on that. Um like I said, given my family grace. We had a situation recently. Uh, you know, and I won't go too much into detail, but it was one of those situations where it was like, okay, I got your back in front of these people. When we came home, it was like, all right, look, this is my honest, true feelings on what happened, and not and I had to make sure that I wasn't giving the other party grace over my wife, right? So I'm like, I'm trying to make sure you understand that I'm saying that yes, this was wrong, and I'm not cool with what happened. But I'm also saying that hey, this is the way I believe we should respond as a team, and I want to make sure that that's what we're doing, not to let anybody else off the hook, but to just to make sure we have a plan and that we're moving forward with this plan. And I think we'll help us be successful in the end. So it's a it's another thing, like you say, like I've said before, just unprogramming, getting rid of a lot of the programming that I came up with through experiences, through uh, media, movies, and music, and even experiences that I've seen other people growing up with, and having to really say, okay, there was a lot happening deep down in some areas that I didn't see at first, and being able to say, okay, let's weave through it all. Let's get to this understanding and figure out why these behaviors were happening, and how did it affect me. So yeah, I'm but yeah, I got all the graces from my wife and my daughter now.
Good to hear. That's
Yeah.
really good. I remember that being one of the things that really used to make me feel like shit.
Yeah.
It really damaged my self-esteem for a long time, that my partner didn't seem to value me at all, but valued, it was like Mr. Personality anytime that other people were around. So I'm glad to know that that's something that you're aware of and already working on with your
And
family.
it's funny you say it too. Is like we this story comes up ever so often, but like back when we were in college, it was like everyone had the assumption that like I was like the nicest, greatest boyfriend, and and it was like and of course I'm eating it. I was eating it up. Like, yeah, of course I am, but and I believed it. Like I thought that's just because I'm hearing other people say it too, I'm thinking that, yeah, this is what I am in our relationship. Though she's expressing, saying that, nah, you do this and this is how it makes me feel, and this, that, and the other. I'm too busy just focusing on the fact that I believe I believe in my ego, like my inflated
Yeah.
ego right now.
You're
So
drinking your own Kool-Aid.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. And everybody else's too.
Yeah. And I think that's another important note to put a pin in. There is like there's a degree to which getting external validation is necessary for your well-being, to a very small degree. We
Right.
need that. It's a need. We are communal beings.
Mhm.
And so having that support, external validation on when you're doing a good job, that's a good thing. But when it becomes something that you lean heavily on,
Mhm.
when it becomes something that you need from other people, when it becomes essential to your functioning and your opinion of yourself and your view of yourself is built based on it, that's when it's time to ask some questions. It's
Right.
time to get a little deeper. And I also, we touched on we could talk about this all night
Oh,
because there's so many subcategories here to talk about of
right.
things. But I do want to make sure that it's clear all narcissists are not men. There
Right.
are plenty of women who are narcissists as well. I say that only because we touched on how misogyny kind of creates this undercurrent that supports male narcissists
Mhm.
in their self justifications.
Mhm.
But I do want to make it clear that I know, as many of you know and have experienced, that women can be some of the nastiest and most pain inducing narcissists out there.
I mean,
Um,
what do we think Karens are, right?
right.
Those-
That part. And then,
those
then we didn't even get a chance. I was hoping we would get to talk about this, but we're running out of time. But
Mhm.
the people who enable, because narcissists have enablers.
Oh
All
yes,
narcissists have enablers.
yes.
There's behind I saw this post not too long ago that said behind every narcissistic man is his weird mama. And I could say the same thing about a narcissistic woman. A lot of times is and I'm not calling your parents weird or saying that all
No,
parents
no, no. I totally
narcissists
understand
have
what
weird parents. I don't even like the word weird, unless I would describe myself that way for sure. But I would say it was a good peek into the fact that people enable narcissists. And for me, at the time that I was going through an 8-year narcissistic abusive relationship, it was people at our church.
saying.
Our
Mhm.
church strongly validated and acted as enablers to the narcissistic behavior. And look, that sounds like a whole other conversation.
Well, I mean, and that was like I say, even back in college, I was the same way. Like I knew how to move in a church organization. So, I can do something Saturday that was like really messed up. And I'm like, hey, we're going to church in the morning. And like I said, I know how to move in the church. And now I have everyone that's like, just for me, honestly, it's like I got everybody eating out of my hands, and it's like, yeah, see, I'm great. I'm blessed. I'm anointed. So all that stuff you was talking about, like, calm down. It's not that big of a deal. We'll be all right. And yeah, that's that. I mean, and that was my life. That's
Yeah.
just reality.
It creates a psychological warfare. It's a lot of it kind of torments the other person. um but and then even as you're on the road to recovery, I really appreciate the fact that this is something that your partner has a space to talk for hours if she needs to about what's going on. The One of the worst things is walking on eggshells in your own house, and when you're with somebody who's dealing with narcissistic personality disorder, walking on eggshells becomes a way of life a lot of times. And so breaking that down and helping her to learn that she is safe and become safe in your home emotionally and mentally, I commend both of you for working at that. And I'm here for both of you as you go through it in real time. If she needs to talk, I would love to support her. And and in rebuilding, after years of going through that with you being unaware of what you're doing, she has to be in a process of rebuilding.
Well,
And
yes,
that rebuilding process, it's a beast.
yes,
So I applaud both of you for doing the work. It's hard work. Nobody's around to cheer for you while you do it, not
right.
at the lowest points of it. And I think it's brilliant. I've never seen a couple work through it together before, so I'm very inspired. But before we log off, do you have parting advice or thoughts for an audience that's listening?
I mean, the things we spoke on, ultimately, for a narcissist to get better, they have to really want to do that. And I can't. It's one of those things where I can't speak for anyone else, but I know one of the things, the last thing I wanted to be is someone who is, and I've seen it before. I don't want to be the old guy that lives in that house and nobody really, you don't really see nobody going through over there, and he's just mean and he's just angry, and I didn't want to be that type of boss. I didn't want to just be pent up with, all of these feelings and just throwing them and attacking people with them. So, and again, the biggest thing I put for anybody is one of the things I think that the two biggest things I feel like we all would do great with is, first, self-awareness. Know who you are, know how you feel. Don't be afraid to say that something makes you feel a certain way. Don't be afraid to really get down in depths of, what is it that makes you tick. And the second huge thing after that is self accountability. Hold yourself accountable. Don't lie to yourself. If you catch yourself lying to yourself, be like, oh, hold on, I'm tripping. I'm doing too much. Let me dial it back. And I think having those two things will help you to be successful in anything. You know, I mean, when I say anything, I mean it. Whether you're talking about finances, relationship, health and wellness. If you say, this is what I do, this is how it makes me feel, and okay, this is what I need to do, and when you don't do it, you're not going to sit here and lie to yourself and make excuses. You're going to be great. And I think it goes with any personality disorder, any type of illnesses, any type of sickness, and the same thing even with success. Know who you are and hold yourself to, give yourself something to have integrity with, and hold yourself to it.
Mm, that's really good advice. Integrity, being a person of integrity. Thank you so much, Keelan, for coming on the show. And I hope you'll come back again sometime. and talk some more. I would love
I was
to
gonna say, like you said, there's a whole lot that goes into this, and I would most definitely I appreciate you for inviting me on, and anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, have a great night.
Same to you.
I hope that the conversation has been insightful for all of you. And I know there's so many more questions that came in that we didn't get a chance to go around to, but next time for sure. And I just want to send out a special shout out to Keelan's wife and family. Thank you so much for allowing this vulnerable space to share such personal things about your lives. Thank you. And for those who are tuned in, welcome to season 3 of Raven Thissel Live. This season, we are going to be getting very, very real, very deep. We're going to go deeper. This season is for people who genuinely want to grow as people. So we're going to touch on mind, body, spirit, and we're going to really stretch ourselves and push ourselves into those uncomfortable places. So if you are willing and ready to go on this journey, I am more than happy to host the way, and also to be really honest about where I am on the process too. We are learning together on this show. If you have topics or guests that you think should come on the show, feel free to reach out. Raven Thissel on Facebook, and obviously here on YouTube. Thank you so much to IBM TV Network for bringing us back for a 3rd season. And if you didn't know, we are now streaming on Roku and Amazon Prime. So if you are not tuning in live or you want to go back and rewatch a show, you can do it right on your TV from your Roku or through your Amazon Prime account. Or you can join me here on YouTube, which is my favorite place to see all of you. I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon for the next episode. Have a great evening.
Attacks against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are on the rise.
My simple solution to the problem was remove people from the scene and help them feel safer. In terms of the hate crimes, I think there is so much more work to be done. We really need to come together and tackle this issue as a community.
The only trick you need to save time and money is to shop at Aldi. The only trick you need to save time and money is to shop at Aldi. Aldi. Shop differently. Limitless length plus volume. Sensational from every angle. New Lash Sensational Sky High Mascara. Only from Maybelline, New York. Everything that touches your baby should be this comforting. Pamper Swaddlers. The #1 choice of hospitals is 2 times softer. All right, Trivago. Find me a hotel somewhere in Thailand where I can wake up with a view of the ocean. Awesome. The future. It's impossible to see. And when it's finally here, it might not be what you'd expect. It might just be better. Introducing Luxury Electric. Introducing Lucid Air. We're for those who love to discover, who don't need to travel to find something new, and who know when you spend less, you can discover even more at TJ Maxx and Marshalls. Smooth, velvety chocolate wrapped in precious gold. Ferrero Rocher.